I'm JT Stone with the University at Albany's Office of Communications and Marketing. I recently sat down with Rockefeller College student Ari Klein to discuss his political activism. He's been fighting to pass medical aid in dying legislation since high school. Here's our interview. Ari Klein is a junior on the Rockefeller College of Public Affairs and Policy. On top of his homework and extracurriculars, Ari has spent years advocating for legislation at the state level. He's been working to pass the New York Medical Aid in Dying Act. The proposed law would allow New Yorkers with terminal illnesses to get a prescription to end their life if they choose. Today, I'm here with Ari to discuss his personal connection to the issue, what his activism over the years has looked like, and his goals for the future. Hey, Ari, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, JT?
I'm doing very fine. So
Awesome.
Tell me a bit about yourself.
I'm a junior. I'm a history major with a minor in political science. I'm from Buffalo, New York, and I'm very involved in the Jewish community here in Albany.
And what made you choose UAlbany?
So originally I was a political science major. I'm sure you knew that from the Rockefeller College. But I wanted to come here because it's the political hub of the state. And like you mentioned, I do a lot of lobbying work for the Medical Aid in Dying Act. And I promised my grandfather before he passed away from terminal cancer that I'd help get his bill passed, which is the Medical Aid in Dying bill. And I thought that originally I'd come here, get a degree in public policy and political science, and continue my work in advocacy with lobbying and get a job in that field. But obviously things have changed. I still lobby. I'm now a history major, but I still really plan on getting this bill passed.
Now, you've been advocating to pass the New York Medical Aid in Dying Act since high school, I believe. How did you become, well, you've touched on this, but can you kind of elaborate more on how you became interested in this issue?
Yeah, so my grandfather, Dr. Bob Milch, was the co-founder of Hospice of Buffalo. And as a palliative care doctor, he saw how people were suffering needlessly, and he really wanted to change that. So I'm not sure how exactly my grandfather got involved in this bill, but he's been advocating it for at least a couple years, even longer than I have, like probably over 5. And so I got involved with it because my grandfather is my biggest mentor and role model. And we always shared a passion for history and politics. I remember coming home from school every day and talking with him about the news. He'd have Fox News in his den and have CNN on the main TV in the living room, so he could go back and forth and watch both. And so back in 2021, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And before COVID, he promised to take me to Albany to lobby with him. And I was really interested in that. And I didn't know at the time that I was for the Medical Aid in Dying bill. And the last thing I told him before he passed away was, I'm going to get your bill passed. So I've been working all I can with all my effort to get it passed.
That's such a powerful story. I want to say thank you for sharing that with everyone. Now, can you give me an overview of what the New York Medical Aid in Dying Act would do if passed?
Okay, so if passed, it would allow a mentally capable adult with a prognosis of 6 months or less the option to end their life with a medication if they choose to do it. A lot of people think that this is forcing euthanization down people's throats, but that is not this bill. It is not what it does. It gives people the option to go on their own terms.
And tell me a bit about the work that you've done on this issue since high school.
Yeah.
Like you've been at this for a while.
It has been since senior year of high school. So my senior year, I wrote an opinion ed with Steve Greenberg, who was my editor. I wrote it with him for the Buffalo News, and that was a great piece. Then after that, I was interviewed by, I believe, Channel 7 in Buffalo on the TV, and that was really cool. I got to talk with my mom on the TV. And it's really interesting because a lot of people, I'm sure it's for a lot of people listening to this, it's going to be their first time learning about this bill. A lot of New Yorkers, like over 60% of New Yorkers support this bill. They don't even know that it's struggling to get passed in legislature.
Critics of the bill say it would target people with disabilities or people with suicidal ideations. The Center for Disability Rights New York called the bill, quote, an existential threat to disabled New Yorkers. What do you make of those concerns?
I think if you truly are concerned about euthanization and disabilities rights, read the bill. It has so many safeguards. It's modeled after Oregon's bill, which has been passed since the 90s. It has been in their government since the 90s. Read this bill. There are so many safeguards, and specifically on the suicide issue. You need 2 different doctors to sign on and give you a mental evaluation saying that you don't want to kill yourself for the sake of killing yourself, this is because you are in so much pain from the terminal illness that you have been inflicted upon.
And as you had mentioned, 10 states and Washington, D.C. already have their own medical aid and dying
But not
acts
New York.
on the books. As you said, the nation's oldest law, is Oregon's 1994 Death with Dignity Act.
Yep.
Why do you think a similar law has not been passed in New York?
I think it's honestly failure of the legislatures. Like I said before, over 60% of New Yorkers support this bill. A lot of biases lie in religion. I'm not trying to diss religion at all. I'm a very proud Jew. It's issues like this, and death makes people uncomfortable. It's a very uncomfortable thing that almost every single New Yorker is going to have to deal with at some point in their life. Is either a death with a loved one, death of a friend, or themselves. It's a very touchy subject, and I'm not trying to minimize that, but it's a very necessary bill that almost everyone's going to have to go through. I know my grandfather helped run hospice care. Almost every single person in hospice care is going to have to deal with this at some point.
And I'm sure that you've spoken to plenty of people who have been personally impacted. Without sharing names, I was wondering if you could share just some personal stories that you've heard from people who would be deeply impacted by this bill.
So one of the first people that I met when I was lobbying, who's no longer alive, the thing they said in the Capitol was, "I'm not going to be here next year. I'm going to die. Please help me." And that has stuck with me ever since. And then I met another family whose daughter was a couple years older than us when she passed away. She loved ballet. She was a great dancer. And by the time she died, she had enough morphine in her system to kill an elephant. And the doctors lied to her. They said that she wouldn't be in any pain, and she was in so much pain. It's unbelievable. And when you look at pictures of her at the beginning and after, it's crazy.
And you had mentioned religion and how people with certain religious views that may make them opposed to this bill for moral religious reasons. I know that you're very open about your Jewish faith, and I was wondering if you could talk a bit about how your faith influences your political activism.
So in Judaism, we learn that you must save life, and you also must prevent suffering. And if that means that someone's life they're in so much pain and it's not worth it to live, then you have to help them relieve that suffering. That's my moral belief. I know I can't speak on behalf for all the Jewish community, but that's my personal belief and how my faith plays into this.
And being a student, how has that element of your activism impacted your fight in kind of the political arena?
It's refreshing for lawmakers to hear it from young people. They don't get that often. It's mostly adults. Young people need to use their voices. It actually really, really helps make a difference. I've been able to help sway the votes of certain key lawmakers to get this bill passed. And it's because a different view is coming at them, and that's really moving.
And what do you hope to do after graduating from UAlbany? I know that you're a junior now, so it's not too far away.
It's funny. I learned that I was going to graduate in 3 semesters last week. So currently the plan is that I'm going to get a master's either here with the 4+1 plan or somewhere else, and then go on to get a PhD in history because I want to be a history professor.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. See, I hear PhD, I'm like, that seems like so much, so much experience, so difficult. I think that's amazing. I mean, you're definitely very articulate, very intelligent. I was wondering, what advice would you give to other students who are maybe on the fence about engaging in political activism?
Do it. There's nothing to be scared of. There's going to be an army of people behind you. And whatever field you go into, even if it's things that JT and I aren't actively supporting, no matter where you go, you're going to get support, and it's always good to have young voices.
Well, Ari, thank you so much for speaking with me. Is there anything else, just generally speaking, that you'd like to add? Yeah,
so lawmakers, you don't need to have this be a personal choice for you and your family, but please don't inhibit it from other New Yorkers. Please get this bill passed.
Well, we hope that you enjoyed hearing Ari Klein's story. I'm JT Stone with UAlbany's Office of Communications and Marketing. Thanks for listening.